Hello, good evening. Good evening and good evening. So I'm just trying to set up my table. Okay. So good evening everyone. Please, if you can, you're welcome to another live stream for today. Please, if you can hear me, please let me know. If you can hear me, let me know, please. Hi, good evening. Hello. Diane, can you see me? Let's see. Can you see me? Good evening. Good evening. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, guys, so good evening and welcome to another live class. So, guys, in today's class, we are going to be drafting a pattern. So, actually, someone actually sent this to me. Good evening. Good evening. Harriet, Florence, good evening. So, when I'm done, I'll still go back and respond to all of your chats. So, thank you. Thank you. Helen, good evening. Elizabeth, good evening. So, like I said, someone actually sent me this picture. She wanted me to like explain like a tutorial on this, okay? So you guys, you can see. So this is what I'm going to be doing today. So I'm going to be showing you guys how to cut this. This is a subscriber request. So if you have a request, you can send me your pictures on WhatsApp. Okay, so send pictures at this point. So I'll be collecting subscriber requests and then I'll use patterns. So it's not, we might not be able to sew all of them, but at least I'll be able to explain to you guys here on our live streams how to cut it. So I'll get, if it's the one that I'll use the fabric to cut, I'll use fabric to cut. If it is the one that I'll use what do you call it, to the one I'll use pattern, I'll use a pattern, but just send your pictures, okay? So thank you so much. So today this is what we're going to learn. So we're going to be cutting the top part. So I said we'll use a pattern for both of them. So we'll do the top part first and then we'll do this, and then I'll show you guys how to join it together. That's with our patterns, okay? So guys, as you're just coming, please like this video. I would appreciate that. So let's go. So let's see. So I just want to make sure that the whole of my table is captured here so that you guys will be able to see. So let's start, and then the measurements that I'm going to be using now. So I have some measurements here. So as I go along, I'm going to call the measurements out, okay? So as I go, I would work with the measurement. I will show you guys here. So this is our back piece. We're going to draft the back piece first. So the first thing we're going to do, so if you notice, it is not a yoke. Actually, so when they send you pictures like this, it's always good for you to check, take a good look at it. It is not a yoke, okay? So it is not a yoke. It is just like a square neckline. I'm trying to get the range of that neckline. So the first thing that we're going to be doing, the bust points that we're going to use for this, we're going to be using 11 for our bust point, okay? And the bust is going to be 44, so it's going to be a big bust, okay? Joy, good evening. So the first thing, let's add our shoulder measurement. So you divide your shoulder measurement into 4, 2. So the shoulder measurement is 16 inches, which is 8. I'll mark it here and then just add 1 inch allowance. So from this point, I'm going to come down by 1 inch. I'll mark it like this, and I will connect this. So I'm so sorry, I did not mark out my lines before starting. So let's just go ahead and mark all of our lines, okay? So the first line that we need for our back pattern, we need our bust point line. Like I told you guys, we're using 11, and then the under is 15, and then the full length of the back is 19, okay? So that's for our back piece. So these lines, I am going to connect them like this. So you guys should just watch along, just go along. It is a simple process. It's you understand, there's nothing much in drafting that style. So I have all of my lines here, okay? So this is our bust point, under bust, and then our waist. So the next thing, so like I said, came down by 1 inch before. So that 1 inch, we're just going to connect that to our shoulder line like that. So the next thing now, the bust is 44. So when you have 44 inches, you are going to divide 44, divide it into 6. When you divide it into 6, I have 5.5 plus, I will now add 1.5 inches to it. That's 6, 7. Okay, so that's what I'm going to armhole. So I'll mark that line like that. I'm just going to connect it like this, and then I would mark this like this. So if you have questions, you can drop your questions. So as soon as I turn I will respond to your questions, okay? So the next thing I'm going to mark my armhole, my round armhole. So the round of my armhole, I'll mark these points like this. That's the center, and then I would connect this. So this is for my back neckline, my back armhole. The next thing I'm going to add now, let's add our bust measurement. So the bust is 44. 44 divided by 4, 11.5. Yes, so we'll mark that. And then I'm going to add like 2 inches allowance to it. So why I'm adding 2 inches allowance, or 2.5 inches, I'll inch for my dart. So the same thing that I have here, I'm just going to bring my bust line this way, and then my under bust is 38. Let me check my measurement. My under bust is 37 inches. So that 37 inches, I'm going to divide 37 into 4. So 36, that's 9. Sometimes all of this calculation can be confusing, guys. So for this, I'm going to add my under bust measurement here like this. Like I told you, is a plus size. And then I'll add 1 inch for allowance, and then add my stitching allowance. So I'll use the same 2.5 inches. So from this point, I'm just going to connect this like the under bust. And then for my waist measurement, so the waist measurement is 8. So the waist measurement, the under bust and the waist measurement is almost the same. So it's so I'll divide 38 into 4 like this. You can see what I'm doing. I'll mark it here, and then add 1 inch for my dart, and then I'll add the same 2.5 inches for my allowance. So after marking that, you can see this is so easy. That's for our back pattern. The next thing, let's take out our dart for the back. So to get our dart, we're going to use our nipple to nipple measurement. So our nipple to nipple measurement is, which is our bust span, is 9 inches. So you divide that 9 inches into 2. Good evening. You said what? I thought you were starting with back. Yes, now this is the back. Yes, most times once I'm taking my pattern, I like that, because that is most times that is where you have that zipper bulge, that under bust. If that under bust area, if it is too big, your zip must bulge. So that's the thing. So if you have been following me, you notice all of my patterns that you used to add, I do add my under bust to all of my patterns, because that is where, for me, that is where I usually shape my dresses from. That's where, and once I shape it, that dress will never have a zipper bulge, and it will fit perfectly well. So you can ignore it if you want, but me, that is what I normally do. Thanks for asking. Okay, so I'll mark the 4.5. I'm going to mark it across all of these lines. Okay, and then once I mark it like this, I am going to connect it with my straight ruler like this. Okay, so once I connect this with my straight ruler, the next thing I am going to do, I'm going to add a dart. So for this, this dart, I am going to extend this dart. I'm going to extend it to the top part of my pattern, okay? But before then, let's mark out our neckline because of the kind of neckline that we are doing. So I will extend it. As I'm going to cut it straight to the shoulder part because I don't want it to sag, okay? So for the back neckline, I'm going to use 3.5 inches width. You can use 4 inches. So let's do 3.5 inches. Most times when you are using pattern, it's always good. You do 3.5 inches, and then after that 3.5 inches, the next thing I am going to do, I am going to mark the length of my neckline. So for the back neckline, the back neckline is not going to be square like the front neckline, okay? So the back neckline, I am going to use like 1.5 inch for the round. So I'm going to mark it like this. I'm going to mark it round like this. The next thing, I am going to check what I have here. So I have about 5 inches. I'll divide that into 2, and then I am going to connect this straight to this piece like this. So this will just help me to cut my dart. Just to help me to cut it straight open like this. So the next thing I am going to do now for my back pattern, I am going to connect. I'm going to create like a yoke for the back, okay? So if I want to create like a yoke neckline, that is like a designed neckline, I'm really not cutting it out, but it's going to be like a designed neckline. So the next thing I am going to do, come down from this point. I'll come down by 2 inches, and then once I mark that 2 inches, I am going to mark that 2 inches like this. I'll connect that 2 inches to this point like this. The next thing I am going to do, so once I connect that 2 inches like this, the next thing now, I am going to cut this off now, okay? So before I do that, let's take out our dart. So I'm using 1 inch dart. So I'll take half of an inch to this side and then half of an inch to this side. So once I take out half of an inch to this side and half of an inch to this side, I am going to connect it to this part of my back neckline. So I just want you guys to watch and see what I am doing. So the next thing I'm going to do now, I'm going to cut out my back piece. Hello? Yes, good evening. Okay, sorry, please. I saw the message. Is it for the complete sets? I don't understand. So one is the amount you wrote is for one. Okay, I'll talk to you later tomorrow by God's grace. Thank you. Alright, sorry guys. I had to pick that call. I've been expecting that call. Okay, so now let's continue. Okay, so you can see our back piece. So the next thing now, let's cut out the front piece. Okay, so this back piece, before I continue, because I want my own to have a yoke, that's why I did this. You understand? That's for the back. I wanted to add a design to my back neckline. You understand? So that's why I did it. So later I'm going to cut this off. But if you don't want your own, if you just want your own to be normal, you can just use the round neckline. Or if you don't want to use a round neckline, so let me show you guys. If you don't want to use a round neckline, you want to use a square neckline, this is what you will do. You use the same width, and then for the depth, most times when you are doing this, for that back neckline, it's usually deeper than the front neckline. So for that back neckline, you can decide to, like, okay, let me use like 9 inches. That's it's going to be okay. So it's like the network went up. So you can see, so the essence of this part now, once I join it, it's going to stay nicely. Okay, so you can see. So the next thing now, let's draft out our front piece. So I'll keep the back on the side. So at the end of the day, I still altered that pattern. So let's do the front piece, which is like the major part of our tutorial for today. Okay, so let's add all of our lines back into our pattern. So this is our shoulder line, and then I'll mark my 11 inches for my bust point. And then 14 inches for under bust, and then 19 inches for the waist. So I have extra here, which we are going to use. I'm going to add to my front waistline. So all of these points, I'm going to connect them straight. So I have an extra of 5 inches here at the down of my pattern that I'm going to use for the slanted part of the waistline. So the next thing we're going to do now, let's mark out. So for this top one, we're going to use a shoulder dart so that we'll be able to arrange it properly. Okay, yes. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to mark out my shoulder measurement. So the shoulder is 16, which is divided into 2. You have 8. I'll add 1 inch as my allowance, and then I'll come down by 1 inch, and then slope that into my pattern this way. And then I'll mark my armhole just like I explained earlier. Divide your bust measurement circumference into 6, and then add 1.5 inches. Okay, so at this point now, what I am doing, I am trying to mark out my neckline, my armhole. So the next thing we're going to do now, from this point, I'll check my armhole measurement, divide that by half, and then I'll come in by like 1/4 of an inch. So that 1/4 of an inch, from that point I'll just come into that 1/4 of an inch, and then from that 1/4 of an inch I'll connect this. Okay, so the next thing I am going to do, I'm going to mark I'll take out my dart. So for the dart, we're using 4.5 inches, just like I explained earlier. So that 4.5 inches, I'm going to mark it across all of my lines like this, and then I will connect it with a straight ruler like this. So let me check if we have questions so that I can okay, yes, the network is really Yes, network is bad. So sorry about that. It is. Okay, so I'll connect that straight, and then the next thing I'm going to do now, we are going to mark out our neckline. So let's mark out our neckline. Yes, our neckline we're using 3.5 inches. That's the width. I'll mark it like this, and then the next thing I'm going to mark, I'm going to come down. So I want to check how deep my neckline is. So you can see that neckline is almost to the chest line. So now let's determine our chest line from this point. So for the chest line, I'll use 8 inches for my chest line. Okay, so that chest line, I'm going to connect it straight like this. So the next thing now, so at this point now, I know that my neckline is going to be almost to my chest line. Okay, so for the depth of the neckline, I'll use 6.5 inches. So that's 6.5, and then this is 3.5 inches here. So that this neckline, there's a way the neckline is. The neckline came like this and then came like this. That's it, came like this and then came like this. So now we're going to mark that. So at the down part of my neckline, I'm just going to mark my 3.5 that I marked earlier. I'll mark it here like this, and then I would connect this like this, and then connect this like this. Okay, so once I connect it like this, the next thing we're going to do now, let's connect our dart. So for our dart, I'll come to my under bust line like this. So for the under bust, I want to mark. Okay, so this line now, let me extend it to the chest line. So I'll come to my under bust line like this, and then I want to take out my dart. So for the dart that I want to take out my dart, I'm thinking of the dart that I will use. You know, most times what I normally do depends on the style. That is what will determine the kind of dart that I will use. Okay, so I'm just trying to think if I should use this. No, so my dart will be to one side. It will be better that way. So the next thing I'm going to do now, from this point, I'm going to use 2 inches for my dart. So I'll mark my 2 inches here. That 2 inches, I'm not very sure, seriously. So from that point, I'll connect this to this. I'll still take out half of an inch from this side. So from this point like this, I'll mark this, and then I want to check my shoulder, what I have here. So I have about 5 inches. I'll divide that into 2, and then I'll connect it to my shoulder this way. So that if I connect it like this, it will be too straight. So I'll just check what I have here, and then come in a little bit. Yes, I'll come in a little bit, and then I will do this. Okay, I don't want it to have something like a curve there. So from this point, I'm just going to blend this like this. Okay, so I'll blend this like this. Okay, I'll just blend this. So the next thing I'm going to do now, I'm going to come. Okay, so guys, the network is so bad, very, very bad. So the next thing we're going to do now, we're going to take out our dart from our shoulder. So from this part of my shoulder, I'm going to come in by like half of an inch, and then that half of an inch, I'm going to mark it to this point. So I'm going to tell you guys the reason why I am doing this. So the reason why I am doing this is because I want this part to lap properly. So if you notice that neckline, the down part, so this part now of the down part, you are going to extend it, let it meet this line. That's this. We are going to extend it like this. So this neckline now is going to come like this. So from this point like this, I'm going to connect this out to meet this point like this. So I hope you guys are getting it. I hope you are getting it. So from that part, if you notice, just see what I am doing. You see the way the neckline is. This point like this, that part is the 3.5 inches part. It should not exceed that part. Then this part now, remember initially we marked this, the same 3.5 inches that we used for the top. That's what we marked here. So now after taking out half of an inch from your dart, that's from your shoulder, you take out half of an inch. So when you take out that half of an inch, that line, you are now going to extend it, let it meet that point, and then you connect it to that point to give you that shape. Okay, so the next thing we are going to do now, we are going to take, for the down part of our dart, I'm going to use 1.5 inch. So I am just going to connect it down like this. So you can add all of your snatch waistline, whatever you intend to add. You can just add all of them to it at this point. So the next thing now, we'll take out our full body measurement. So 44, our bust measurement is 44, which is 11.5. I'll mark it here, and then I'll add my 2 inches or 2.5. That I'm supposed to add 2.5, but because my pattern paper is finished, so I'll just do 2 inches. And then the same thing I have there, that is what I'll bring to my bust line. So please note, what you mark there, you bring it back to your bust line. On your chest line, bring it to your bust line. Then your under bust line, my under bust, her under bust is 37. So you divide 37 into 4, and then I'll mark it like that. And then I'll remember our dart of 2 inches, bring that back into our pattern, and then I'll add my stitching allowance. Okay, so I'll come to this waist part. Her waist is 38 inches, so divide 38 into 4. Divide 38 into 4. So when you divide 38 into 4, sometimes I'm still struggling so much to calculate all of these things. Okay. 9 plus 9, 36. Okay, I'll mark it like this, and then I'll bring my dart, I'll bring that back into my pattern. So I'm not adding any snatching of the waist. Okay, so that's for my waist. And then for my hip line, remember that part. So like I said, I added an extra of 5 inches to my pattern, please note. And then I'll mark my hip line at that line, and then add my darts, and then add my allowance. Okay, so all of these lines that I marked, I am going to connect them. So this will come like this, and then this will come like this, and then this will come like this. Okay, so after marking this, I'm thinking the easiest way for us to do this, because that slant is going to be slanted to one side. Please note, it's going to slant to one side. So we're going to open up our pattern. So before then, let us cut our pattern. Let's cut the neckline. Let's cut the top part, but I'm going to leave this down part. So let's see. So you can see now, even me, I'm trying to be very careful. So when I'm cutting, you can see the way I am cutting this now. Okay. So I've marked that part, I've cut that part out. So at this point, I need to be very careful. Before I even fix this, I'm going to take out this dart. So but before then, let me create a slanted waistline first before I pieces my pattern. So you can see what I have. Can you guys see the neckline? You see that the neckline looks exactly like what we have. So this part, I'm still going to reduce it from this part so it does not sag, okay? But before then, I want to create out my slanted neckline. That's my slanted waistline. Before then, I will reduce my pattern. I just want to reduce it because it's too wide. So that is why I am just doing this. What am I cutting now? So in creating out that slanted neck waistline, I'm thinking sometimes when it's always better for you to create it with the skirt. So let's cut out our skirt. So for the skirt pattern, you all know how to draft a skirt. A skirt is like the easiest thing, okay? So for the skirt, let me just add my waistline. It is very simple. And then the next line I'll add is my hip line, which is 10 inches for my skirt. And then the knee line is 18 inches. And then of course the full length of your skirt, okay? So these are the lines you need for your skirt. So I'll mark the hip line and then mark my knee line. So these are like, it is a straight skirt. So the next thing we're going to add, good evening success, you're welcome. So the next thing we're going to add, let's add our waist measurement. So for this, this pattern paper that I'm using is a little bit small, so I'm going to have to change the waistline. Okay, so the waist measurement that I'm making use of for this is 36, which is 9 inches. I'll mark it here and then I'll add 1 inch for my darts and then 1 inch sewing allowance. And then the hip measurement that I'm using, her hip is 45, so obviously it will not enter my pattern paper. So I'm just going to use, I have 45 here, but I'm not going to have any allowance. So let's just use 44. So I'll mark 44 and then add a little bit of allowance. And then from this point like this, in order for me to get my knee measurement, how do you get your knee measurement? Minus 2 inches from your hip measurement. Okay, so when you minus 2 inches from your hip measurement, that is how you get your knee measurement. So after all of this, we are going to connect all of them like this, okay? And then for the down part of our skirt, we're just going to use what we have here to connect the down part of our skirt, just to give it like a little bit of straight and open skirt. So after this, I'm going to cut this open. Okay, so you guys should please give this video a thumbs up, like the video. So the person that requested for this, I hope you see this tutorial. So can you see? So I've marked this out. So now I'm going to open this now. In order for us to achieve this, our what do you call it? This slanted waistline. This is my skirt now, guys. So I'm going to keep my skirt on the side, and then we're going to work with our dress piece. Okay. So now bring my dress piece back here, and then for me to create that slanted neck waistline, because it is one-sided. Please note it is one-sided. I'm going to need these lines, this waistline. This is the actual waistline. You understand? This is the original waistline, which is the length of the back. So I'm going to need that. So I am marking this. I've not opened my pattern, but it is easier for me to create this out before I open my pattern. Okay, so after marking this, the next thing I am going to mark, it depends on, so you remember I used 5 inches to drop mine. So from this waist point, I'm going to come up a little bit because I want the slope. I want it to slope. So at this point I can decide to come up by 1 inch or 2 inches, so it depends. That's from the actual waist measurement to actual waistline. I'll come up that way, and then I'll use a ruler. Let me use my long ruler, and then I'll use my long ruler this way, and then slope it to that 5 inches point that I marked. Okay, I'll slope it into that point that way. So after sloping it this way into this point, the next thing I am going to do now, I am going to cut this out. First of all, cut out the slanted neck waistline first. So can you see, like I said, I added an extra of 5 inches. Can you see? I added an extra of 5 inches to my pattern piece. So at this point now, the next thing I am going to do, I'm just looking for a way to explain this, because most times when I'm doing this, I will finish sewing before I normally do this. That's, I'll sew my blouse, that's, I'll couple my blouse before, that is, I will cut open my blouse. I'm just trying to explain it. I'll cut it open, sew it and join it back. You understand? Sew the top part of my blouse, and then before I'll bring it to my skirt. Okay? I'm coming, let me see. I need to answer that question. Okay, say to remove 2 inches from him is after you add the sewing allowance. After you add the sewing allowance, or should we deduct 2 inches from the actual measurement or the hip? Because my skirt at the knee, let's say, okay, my skirt at the knee is always very tight after sewing. Yes, and whatever you add, yes, I understand your questions now. Whatever you add, that's after adding. Let me explain it now. After adding, you know, for the skirt, this is the hip line. I've added my hip line, and then I added allowance. So whatever you have here plus your allowance, that is what you take. That is what you remove 2 inches. That's the whole entire measurement, not just the actual measurement, plus the allowance. That's plus this hip line allowance, everything plus the allowance. That's showing actual measurement plus allowance. Whatever you have, for instance, if you have 14 inches, that's plus the allowance. That's when you place your tape like this now, and you have 14 inches, for example. You will now remove 2 from that 14 inches and bring it to your hip line. So you now put 12 here. So that 12 inches also, that 12 inches now is what you will now mark here. Okay, even that 12 inches, if you don't want your knee to be too tight, you can still add 1 inch to it for sewing allowance. Okay, so I hope I've been able to answer that question. So let's continue. So like I said, I was explaining to you guys, I said most times what I normally do after sewing my blouse, that is when I would bring it to do this. But because we are using pattern for today's class, I am just going to assume that this piece is already sewn, that is already coupled together. Now that's my front piece is already coupled. Okay, thank you so much, no problem. So I will just assume now that my blouse is already coupled, and then I want to add this slanted waistline now I have on my blouse. I want to add it to my skirt piece. Okay, so what you will do, this is how this one is God. This one could really be trickish. Can you see how I am placing it? So you open your skirt straight, because you know it is a slanted neckline. You cannot do it like this, like a basque. If it's a basque, you fold your basque and add. But when it comes to a slanted waistline, you cannot do that. So this is the high part of, that's the higher part, and then this is the slanted part. Okay, so what you will do at this high part, you are going to place your fabric piece. You understand? You're going to place it like half of an inch. Yes, it's good to use half of an inch, so that after sewing it can come down a little bit. So you are just going to place it like half of an inch at that point, and then this point. So if you check now, as you place this part now on half of an inch like this, or 1 inch, you will see that this one automatically came into the hip area. Okay, so now what you are going to do, you are going to trace this out. You understand? You are going to trace this on your skirt. Just watch, you should just watch what I am doing. You are going to trace this like this on your skirt piece like this. Okay, so like I said, this could really be tricky. So once you trace it on your skirt now, okay, so now we have traced our waistline here. When you are cutting, please don't cut it on this exact line. Okay, if you cut it on this exact line, it's going to be too big. So when you want to cut, you are going to still come up with like 1 inch. That's after marking it on the skirt. So you come up by like 1 inch, and then can you see what I am doing? Can you see the way I'm taking it? You see, so at the end of the day, what I am taking out from this top part is just like half of an inch, or like even quarter of an inch from this part. So I've succeeded in creating my slanted waistline. So just take a look at both of them now. Can you see how it fits perfectly well? If I was sewing, can you see? Can you see how it fits? It fits perfectly well. You see, because I did not cut it at that exact point. Okay, so you can see. So at the end of the day, this is how it's going to stay, or it's going to stay like this. So I just want to open it so you can see. You see how the slanted neck waistline is looking. So you can see this is how you actually do this. Okay, it is a simple process. So now, after doing this, now I can now cut my blouse. After explaining it, I can now cut this open. So I can now cut all of this, all of my piece. People know that I did not cut it before, just like I explained why. So I've removed that. The next thing, I am removing this one. So after everything, this is what I am going to have. So now I'm going to open my piece out like this. So can you guys see what I have? So automatically, this is how my piece is going to look after cutting everything out from my pattern. So guys, this is everything for today's class. So that person that sent this, so like I said, you can send me your questions. Okay, you can send me your questions, and also you can send in your subscribers request, so I can use a pattern. If you know you don't mind me using a pattern to explain it on our live stream, so you can send in your subscribers request. So guys, thank you so much, all of you that tuned in into our tutorial tonight. So thank you so much, guys. So today I decided I did not want any, I did not do makeup. I even tied my hair and just wore my glasses. So thank you so much, guys, for tuning in to our tutorial for today. So for those of you that did not see this was what we did in our last live stream. Yes, good evening. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, God bless you. This is what we did during our last live stream. So in case you don't know how to cut this kind of blouse, you can still go back and watch the tutorial. So thank you so much for watching. So like I said, you can send me your tutorials request, your subscribers request, send them in. I would Thank you so much, Victoria. Let me check, see her name. Okay, Vincent. Oh yeah, Victoria. Yeah. Thank you so much. So guys, thank you so much. I'll see you guys in our next live stream, which is going to be tomorrow is Friday, maybe Saturday by God's grace. Thank you so much. Bye bye.